Hey, Joe.
Hi. Hi. Just kind of waiting a few seconds to allow people to come in. I'll actually also ask Doug to co-host me at this point, if you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
mind, Douglas.
Certainly.
Thank you. Awesome. I can see. All right, folks. So we're just admitting people in from the waiting room. So as that's happening, perhaps I'll just start speaking just to orient you and welcome you to this session here today. The session of Climate Jeopardy. Essentially, we're doing an interactive workshop designed to teach us about the climate crisis in a fun and engaging way, or by playing a kind of game of Jeopardy. This is the last event of the Sustainability and Climate Crisis Residency at Force brought to you by the Loyola College for Diversity and Sustainability and the Loyola Sustainability Research Center. And what a fun way to end the week. So those of you who have taken the time to come and join us here today, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we hope that we're going to have a grand old time together. Just a couple of words about ForceSpace. I think you might still see it on one of the screens that we've got up here. We are located on the corner of the Maisonneuve and Mackay in the downtown campus of Concordia and the library building, those of you familiar with that space. We are a university-wide platform whereby we work with our community of researchers, students, faculty members, staff, to basically examine what's happening across the university, across disciplines, and activate that happening through various kind of activities. So we're really focused on mainly looking at research, but also other initiatives and course-based activities. We are recording this session, why not? And we're also streaming, so I can pop those links in the chat for anybody who's interested. And obviously it's a game, so it's interactive. So we'll all be kind of hopefully playing together and going off to breakout rooms, etc. We'll see how many people join us overall. But perhaps at this point, I'll just pass it over to Rebecca to say a few words before I invite Alexandre Pache to explain how we're going to proceed. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Anna. And thank you to all of you for being here this afternoon on a sunny Friday afternoon for the last of our series of events. If you have missed events earlier in the week or you'd like to revisit them, please do visit our website wherever you found the information about this session, and you will find recordings going up very soon. Already gone up for most of the week. Today's will be going up very soon so that you can revisit those sessions. You can also check out ForceSpace on Facebook and on YouTube. I would like to start today with our territorial acknowledgement. We are coming to you live today from Tiohtià:ke, otherwise known as Montreal, in the unceded lands of the Kanakahaka of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. If you are interested in finding out where you are at present, or perhaps where you come from, you can check out the great map on native-land.ca, which might give you some indication of who originally who inhabits the land and to whose land from whose land you are coming today. So I'd like to thank Alex Pache and Brogan Stewart, who are here from the Climate Emergency Committee in the Department of Geography, Planning and Environment here at Concordia University. I'm super excited. I've heard so much about this Climate Jeopardy game, but I've never actually seen it in action. So I'm going to pass it over to Alex and let him run the show here. I'm hoping that there's music and $1 million prizes, which I can't provide, so apologies for that. But I'll invite Alex to take the stage and take it away.
Hey, everybody. So we're a small group today. I recognize most of your faces, and I mean, I'll explain what Jeopardy is either way. So Climate Jeopardy is something that the Climate Emergency Committee of Concordia has developed over the past year and a half. And it's developed as a resource for educators, mostly from late high school to like early university, as a resource for them to teach about the climate crisis in a fun, interactive way. So we based it loosely on Jeopardy, but we changed the J for a G because geo means earth. And we've presented it in a couple dozen classrooms, so to hundreds of students, and has gone very well. We've got a lot of positive feedback. A lot of students really enjoyed it, especially the gamification part of it. And we've collaborated with John Abbott, and we've been in a few high schools as well. And we've also presented it here at Concordia. So I'll just go to the scoreboard. So basically it's developed so that even an educator without a background in climate science or the climate crisis, there's enough information within the slides for them to present this and have a comfort in presenting it, and that every slide answer has the explanation for that you would give on the spot, and then it also has background knowledge that's all cited with academic articles to give them the background to be able to answer any questions that come up, to actually feel comfortable within the subject of that question. So given that we're only really 4, is Hector, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Sorry,
Okay.
I didn't find the icon. Okay, I am here. Thank you.
So we were gonna put it out into breakout rooms and in teams, but we don't really have enough people to do that. So I think we'll just go person by person. You choose a question and see if you could answer it within the time limit. And if you don't answer, then anybody else could come in and see if they know the answer. So the way it's set up is we have 5 different subjects and 5 questions for each subject. So climate science, impacts on nature, impacts on humans, personal solutions, and system solutions. And the questions that are worth more points are more difficult generally. So yeah, so the way we'll work is we have Janina, Anna, Yakin, and Hector. I don't know, Rebecca, I think you said you are brain dead, so maybe you won't. You could chime in if ever you want.
All right. If people have questions about the format, about how you use this in the past or anything, can they chime in with questions? Are we being very formal?
Yeah, let's be informal about it. So we'll go through the questions, and if anybody wants to ask questions about the questions and the answers, then we could discuss it, because there's a lot to discuss here.
Well, I have a question to start with. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah,
so my question is, you presented this at elementary schools and high schools and at the university level, right?
Not in elementary schools. Only
not in elementary. Okay. So my question was, do you ask the same questions? But if it's doesn't include elementary, maybe that doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, well, I find the youngest we presented it to was secondary 3, which is grade 9.
9, yeah.
And that's where I started to see the difference, where like it was getting a bit too hard for them. But between secondary 4 and university level, it's been pretty impressive to see. It really depends on the class, of course, because sometimes we would be in like a business class, other times we would be in like a geography class. So the geography students would tend to know a bit more, but it's been really inspiring seeing that some of the students, some like high school students, knew more than some CEGEP students. Like they ended up getting more points in the same amount of time. They got more points overall than a couple CEGEP classes. So it's
Alex,
interesting.
This is totally a research project in the making.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to see that actually some of the younger students are more informed and more aware than some of the slightly older students, even if it's just like 3-4 years of difference. So that's made me quite inspired and quite hopeful. So yeah, let's get started. I'm gonna start by picking Yakin as a first player. So you have to, well, actually we'll do a test question, and then you'll pick a question after. So just to show how it works.
I want a question about urban sprawl and climate. Are there any questions about urban sprawl in there?
Not
Impacts on
directly.
humans, no?
Well,
System
yeah.
solutions.
There's none directly about urban sprawl, but I could slip urban sprawl into the explanations of a couple of them.
But you're probably not supposed to tell anybody who's tasked to choose a question what's in any of these questions.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
So
but
we'll
you're
start-
doing a practice question first, yeah?
Yeah, so we'll do climate science for 200 points. So name one of the two main human sources of greenhouse gases. So for the students that are, for the younger students and the not necessarily the students that aren't in environmental science or anything, we have a little side thing here of what gases explaining what greenhouse gases are. So the top three greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. And then we would go on to explain the greenhouse gas effect and how the shape of their molecules traps the heat. And yeah, so we have a lot of little background things like that tends to be more for the students that have less background. So we would focus more on these type of things if we were doing it in younger classes. Okay, so this just as an example. Does anybody know? Give me a. I want the two main human sources of greenhouse gases here, since everybody here should be informed enough for that.
So you're making it tougher for us.
Yeah.
So what are we supposed to shout out the answer now?
Yeah, I mean, so usually what would happen is, oh, the animation didn't work there, but basically that red or orange bar is supposed to go down, and it has 60 seconds. We set it for 60 seconds on the online version so that we found that going into breakout rooms. So what we would do ideally is you'd be in your team and go in a breakout room and have your discussion for 60 seconds. In person, we were doing 30 seconds. So we thought just because it takes time to get into the breakout rooms that we'd give it a bit extra time. So yeah, basically you would have 60 seconds to answer this question in your breakout room, and there would be the Jeopardy music playing in the background if you have the live version open. So it's a bit different now because we're not doing in the breakout room. So we would have, you would go onto the YouTube live version and you'd be able to see the question while you're in your breakout room, because when you're in your breakout room, you wouldn't be able to see the question anymore.
So am I supposed to go on YouTube now or not then?
It doesn't really matter anymore. But you could, yeah, because we're not doing it formally.
If I want to listen to the music, if I want to hear the music, then I may have to, no?
Yeah, if you want to hear the music, yeah. But for this test one, we'll
okay.
So Yakin, what name one of the two main human sources?
Oh, I am on. Oh, flying with planes.
Okay, yeah. Does anybody have another one?
Maybe animal farms, particularly cows.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it. So we put it basically into two main categories, so fossil fuels and land use change. So flying, you have the little airplane right here. And yeah, electricity generation too, so that would fall into fossil fuels, because fossil fuels, of course, is used for all of these things. And then one that's less known is land use change. So 80% about of our greenhouse gases are from fossil fuels, but that other 20% is from land use change, so from deforestation and agriculture. So I would put the livestock, as Hector said, in agriculture. So deforestation and agriculture, it's not as obvious, because when we remove forests and we burn them, that carbon that was stuck in those trees ends up in the atmosphere. And then if we change that land to agriculture, that storage of carbon will not regenerate there. And especially in intensive agriculture, the soil usually stores carbon, and in intensive agriculture, it tends to be all released. So a lot of carbon is released that way. So that's basically how it works. Let's go back to the scoreboard. And now you can see that climate science for 200 is blacked out. So that's no longer available. So let's proceed. Whoopsie. Okay, I see there's some things with on internet that I'm not used to yet. Okay. Yeah, Rebecca, that's a good, I'll take some notes. So that's so if anybody has advice at the same time, because this is still a work in progress, it's still not completed, and when it's completed, we want to send it out to as many educators as we can. So if you have any ideas.
Yeah, can I ask, how do you know that agriculture is more important than deforestation? I think deforestation is pretty bad.
You just have to look at the stats that keep track of emissions and how much is emitted from deforestation and how much is emitted from agriculture.
And it's much more.
Yes. Sorry, I teach my forest management class. How important is forest management in terms of climate change? You guys have taken my class, right?
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so now let's move on. And does somebody want to pick a question or a subject and a point value, please?
I think you have to determine somebody.
Yeah.
Alex, do you want to go down the list in the order that I put it there, or maybe just we can go through that way?
In the list that where
The
it was.
scoreboard, Anna, I have Team Anna first, and then Team
Okay.
Hector, Team,
Alphabetically?
Team Yoko.
Yeah. Okay. So Team Anna.
Ooh, which one do we want?
Impacts on nature.
Okay, so we'll go for impacts on nature. We'll go with shall we go with 300?
Oh sure. Oh, there's numbers. Oh, those are the points.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll go with impacts on nature 300.
Okay.
Good choice.
So over time, how plants in North America react as the climate warms up. Over time, how plants in North America
react as the climate warms up. Pick 2 right answers. So will they A, move northwards, B, move up mountain slopes, C, change their color, D, move southwards?
I'm gonna answer this one for us.
Sure.
I'm gonna say A, move northward, because it's gonna be the warming climate, so the north is gonna get slightly warmer, and then also move up mountain slopes because it's also gonna get a little warmer as what?
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yes, those are our answers.
That is correct. So vegetation will generally move northwards and up mountains. Over time, they will be able to survive in areas that were previously too cold. So in the north, this is easy to understand because it's going to get warmer as you go northward, and northern areas are actually getting affected much quicker than other areas in the world. But on mountains, it's a similar process. So as you go higher up in elevation, up mountains, it gets colder as well because the atmosphere is thinner, and it's going to be getting warmer up mountains as well because of climate change, in the same way that it does as we go northward. And you can see here tree line along this mountain. So this habitat above tree line, it looks pretty barren and like there's not much there, but it's actually, there's a lot of small little vegetation, rare vegetation that lives there, and caribou actually rely on this vegetation. So over time, these areas will be getting smaller and smaller. They're like islands on top of mountains that will be getting smaller and smaller, and it'll be a type of habitat that will be less available. So great, you got the right answer. So let's move on to team, what's the next one? Team Hector.
Okay, let me see. Climate science 300.
Climate science for 300. Which natural phenomenon is not used to understand the climate of the past? So is it A, ice sheets, B, lake mud, C, tree rings, D, coral reefs, E, soil bacteria, or F, they're all used?
Not use. Understand the climate of the past.
I will say it's E. Soil bacteria.
That is incorrect. So the way we do it is that the way we've done it in the past is that when one team gets the wrong answer, we go to the next team in line for half the points since they already know one wrong answer. So I'll go to Jay. What do you think is the answer here for 150 points rather than 300?
F.
That is correct. They are all used. So there's many ways that we could understand the past climate, because climate records are actually quite short in most areas. So we don't know what the climate used to be like from our instruments, but things like tree rings, lake sediments, ice cores, coral reefs, and soil bacteria. This one, the soil bacteria one, is a bit of the catch because it's a newer way that we found out how to understand past temperature, because bacteria in the soil, when we take samples of really old soil, you could see the fat around the bacteria cells. It grows and thins according to what the temperature was at the time. And most of the records are like that. So tree rings are thicker. If you choose the right trees, are thicker when it's warmer, are when it's drier, they're thinner. So there's plenty of ways through tree rings to understand lake sediments. We take cores of the mud at the bottom of lakes, and we could analyze the pollen and other aspects of it to understand what the forests were around. And the forests are usually intertwined with temperature, so we gain understanding through that. Ice cores is really interesting. This is an ice core from Greenland, actually. And the ice over time traps air, and we could study these air bubbles that got trapped in the ice to understand what the air used to be like and what the concentration of carbon was, among other ways. And there's a lot of information in these ice cores. And you could actually see that black line there is an ash layer from an eruption, volcanic eruption. So we could date things that way as well. Coral reefs, it's similar to tree rings in that sorry, I just looked at the chat. Yes, high school students, I mean, sometimes they just guess it and they guess it correctly. But that's when we get to the 300 plus points questions, because Rebecca just said, wow, high school students know this. Yeah, I've definitely had a lot of high school students pick the right question for the right answer for this one. So yeah, coral reefs is the same thing. There's different ways we could understand past climate, but they also grow according to the temperature. So some coral reefs are hundreds of years old, and so we could see far into the past. And basically what these all tell us is that we have to stay in the safe zone. So the past 20,000 years, you see the temperature over the past 20,000 years of this line on the graph. And this red section is the past 10,000 years. During human civilization, we have been within 1 degree range of pre-industrial temperature. And we know that civilization could survive within this temperature range, and we're starting to get into dangerous territory once we go past it. And we're currently just past what this safe zone is. And if we do business as usual, by 2100, we're going to be way past it up here near 5 degrees, so the top of that line. And we're aiming for at least 2 degrees, or to max it out at 2 degrees, where we'll still be out of the range, but we know what to expect at that point. Because once we get to 5 degrees, we don't really know what to expect anymore out of the climate, and that could be bad for civilization. Okay, so next in line, we have Jay. Wait, Jay, how did you? Oh, you got the right. Okay, right. It's still Janina. Please pick a subject and a point value.
I'll go with impacts on humans, 400.
Impacts on humans for 400. Which of the following is false concerning how climate change will likely affect food in Canada? A, the crop yields of farms will increase in Canada. B, cows will produce more milk. C, fruits and veggies will have less nutritional value. D, exotic fruits will be less available. Which of the following is false?
Cows producing more milk.
That is correct. This question is a bit wonky. I think we could improve it a bit, but cows are actually expected to produce less milk in places like Canada because of heat stress. They produce milk at an optimal range of temperature, and since parts of Canada are expected to get more heat waves, they will likely produce less milk. And in general, the growing season is going to be longer for a lot of northern areas. So you could see this map on the left. Everywhere that's in green is, according to the study, expected to have some sort of increase in the amount of their crop yields of the main staple crops. So you can see in Canada, it's mostly green. Parts of Ontario, Ontario is red because the southern parts may be affected. The most southern parts of Canada are in Ontario, so those may be affected more negatively. And it's a bit more uncertain in the prairies where there might be more drought. But in general, in northern areas, we could expect larger crop yields. But for the rest of the world, it's probably going to reduce crop yields. So that's a huge concern. And this leads to less exotic foods like fruits and vegetables because, for example, California is expected to have lower yields, but most of our produce comes from California. So in general, this is obviously not a good thing. It's going to affect overall negatively crop yields across the world. And another interesting thing is that a lot of sort of climate change deniers are people who don't want change, say that the world's actually going to get more green because when there's more carbon dioxide, vegetation grows better. So this is true to a certain extent, but there's studies have shown that fruits and vegetables will actually have less nutrients per area because of the way that this increased carbon dioxide affects how they spread out their vitamins and minerals. Okay, so we're to Yakin now. Please choose a subject and a point value.
Personal solutions 500.
Oh, going big. Personal solutions for 500. How can we relate all these pictures to an important action to reduce climate change? So we have some plastic waste, we have Dollarama, we have some clothing, we have an iPhone, we have Starbucks, and a dump with a car in it.
Oh, choice of consumer goods that we are deciding to buy.
I will accept that answer. So reduce your consumption. So this is a little pie graph of where the average American's carbon emissions come from, but most of these type of things are very similar between Canadians and Americans. So you'll see that transportation is 28% of somebody's, the average person's emissions. Food is 14%. Home heat and cooling 17%. Other home energy use is 15%. And then stuff you buy is around a quarter of your emissions. So by reducing how much you buy and buying stuff that's higher quality and will last longer and fixing things, so sort of this maker culture of making your own things and fixing your own things actually goes a long way on your personal emissions. And clothing, for example, so thrifting is actually pretty important in the picture because clothing is about 10% of the world's emissions, just the production of clothing. And also e-waste is a huge problem because it takes a lot of emissions to make electronics, to make their batteries. So by making your electronics last longer, and for example, if your screen breaks, instead of getting a new phone, actually replacing the screen, it goes a long way in reducing your emissions.
That was an easy one. I think it's worth only 100, should be.
Yeah, but for you, it's honestly, I would agree, but that one has been specifically really hard for students to get. Okay. I don't know why. Like I thought it would be easy, but a lot of students just don't make that direct connection of consumerism and emissions. I think I remember it. I remember when a group of students actually got it for the first time. I was like, finally, so a group got it because nobody was getting it. It even I remember a couple times at John Abbott, it went through the whole, like we had the first team try to answer, and then we did half points because they got it wrong, and then we did half points again because the next team got it wrong, and nobody got it out of the 4 teams that were playing. So it really depends on the group, but I agree that one shouldn't be that hard, but I think we actually moved it up to 500 because
of that. Okay.
yeah.
Can I ask sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I found most people for that one would say littering. Everyone just littering right away, which like is a different problem in itself. So
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you figure out the points then based on a preliminary, tests, or did you, start with some point system and then just move things around if it seemed like they were harder or less hard when you tested it?
So we decided on it's pretty similar to what we first decided as the point values, but we have moved around a couple of questions or sort of changed the phrasing of the questions to make it either easier or harder, because that's what we were doing with the 20 or so presentations that we did last year, is we were trying to gauge what questions worked, what questions were difficult. But the thing is that it depends so much on the group of students that I'll go in one class and, like I said, the reduced consumption question, we'll go through the whole class and nobody will get it right. And I'll go to another class and the first team will get it right. So it's hard to gauge, and it's an issue too, because the students get really competitive. And if they think a question is too easy for the amount of points, they'll call me out on it. And there's been a couple times where I'm like, I don't know. And then if they get a question that they get slightly close to the answer, like Jochen didn't say reduce consumption, but said something related to consumerism. So I gave it, but then I have to be really strict sometimes too, because the students, that's one of the really fun things, is that students have gotten so into it and have gotten into very enthusiastic and almost yelling at each other, but in a fun way where nobody was getting negatively emotional about it, but just it's fun to see students get so into something related to the climate crisis.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, let's
the slides you're showing are showing up in the fourth space live as well, right? You see this window, so people walking by, they can see that from the other side, from the street as well.
Yeah, so hopefully get some exposure that way. Okay, and then we have Olha, sorry.
Hi, everyone. So since we went so far with personal solutions, I'll go a little bit up with system solutions for 300.
Okay. System solutions for 300 points. Geoengineering means to use science to alter the environment. What is currently the most effective way geoengineering can reduce climate change? A, large-scale tree planting. B, capture carbon with tech and inject it underground. C, place giant mirrors in space. D, layer the ocean with iron dust. And these have all been suggested by prominent voices. So which one do you think is the most effective way at the moment?
Okay. We are still not there with capture carbon. So we're still a little bit we are just at the beginning. So I would say that's not exactly there. Layer ocean with iron dust. That's an interesting idea. Never heard of it though. Place giant mirrors in space. That's something interesting, but also I didn't hear. So I will stick with A, with large scale tree planting.
That is correct for 300 points. Yeah, a lot of those seem a bit crazy, but they were seriously suggested. The iron dust in the ocean is to promote, I can't remember if it's plankton or algae or phytoplankton, but to promote growth of these marine organisms that absorb carbon. But there's could be so many negative side effects that it's not a great idea, and a lot of environmentalists and biologists pointed that out, because there's sort of engineers sometimes don't think outside of their frame. But Yeah, so the giant mirrors in space has also been suggested, something that I've heard Elon Musk talk about. And that's to reflect the radiation of the sun in the same way that clouds do, to control, at least temporarily, how much is being absorbed by the Earth. Algae is 5 o'clock, and thank you, Rebecca. And so the most effective way currently, because as you said, carbon capture is extremely expensive. It's we're hoping long term it'll be an important part of the of climate mitigation. But for now, trees are just the most effective way, because trees build themselves with CO2 from the air, that they capture the carbon naturally. And it's been shown that if we plant 1 trillion trees worldwide by 2030, over time, we could capture the amount of carbon that's been emitted in the past like 20 years. So and on top of it, it has a lot of other positive effects of increasing green spaces, increasing habitat, stopping desertification. So it's just a really effective way. So luckily, Canada, Trudeau has committed, I can't remember exactly how much he's committed to helping plant a lot of these trees. And there's a lot of initiative around the world for planting a lot of these trees. So it's a really great and effective way to mitigate climate change at this point. One of the criticisms I've gotten from, I think it was CEGEP students, they were saying, is that really geoengineering? I guess that's up to debate, but I would say it is, because we're engineering the environment by planting trees. And then I'd like to point out Ecosia, which is an interesting search engine. It's based on Bing, like the search engine Microsoft's Bing, but the part of the profits of the ad revenue go to planting trees. So it'll actually tell you every time you search, it's not every time you search they plant a tree, but it'll tell you over time how many trees are being built with the money from the ad revenue that you're generating. And so I've been using it just on one of my computers over the past year, and apparently I've helped plant over 200 trees. So it's a fun, easy way to be part of this solution.
What about other plants? Would it help if I have more plants at home? Pots? How many would I need?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of carbon in smaller plants, especially house plants, I think is negligible. There's, it helps with the air quality in your house, but I wouldn't say it's at a level where you'll absorb enough carbon to affect climate change, because we're talking about trillions of trees, and trees have huge woody parts to them, which is where most of the carbon is stored. So I think having more green in your house in general is a good thing, and it helps you feel closer to nature as well. But I wouldn't say it's really reducing the carbon of the atmosphere. It is to a certain extent, because there is carbon in it, but not in, it's negligible, unless you have a bunch of trees in your house somehow. Okay, so
sorry, I have a comment or question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But when I read the question, and this geoengineering, I kind of thought on something more really scientific approaching. I mean, if I were a student and I was in the class or in the talk, and if I want to probably take a decision of what to do in the future as an academic or as to study something, I will question whether I will go through that in order just to plant trees. I think that because you are basically giving this message, I think that you should make it more attractive for someone, that you say what your engineer can do to modify the environment. Because I mean, if we organize the planet, which is all impossible, right? And plant the trees, we basically don't need something that is scientific. There is no science behind that. is just to plant the trees because we need to improve the environment because we have deteriorated something like that. I'm not sure if there is something that you could give a more interesting message for the audience to capture that interest in the geoengineer.
Yeah, can I just interrupt and say that I'm pretty sure I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but I'm pretty sure that we couldn't possibly plant enough trees to address the climate, to reverse climate change or to stop climate change at this point, so that we do need other solutions. So maybe it's important to put that caveat on it that, there are real reasons that people are working on geoengineering solutions, the option B being the one that is getting the most attention right now, as far as I know. But yeah, it might be important to say, right now we need to plant trees, but we also need to develop other solutions.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. I think that those are both really good suggestions because I think carbon capture technology, it's like I could focus more of the explanation of the answer to say that this is an important place of future research of progress that we need. And I think, yeah, I've heard that as well, that ideally we like, where would we plant these 1.2 trillion trees? That there's probably not enough land without like transforming a bunch of agricultural lands that we need to feed people. So yeah, I think those are both good comments and stuff. I could probably change around this question to make both the wording of the question a bit more clear and make the answer sort of, I could encourage people who are interested in engineering into focusing on something other than just planting trees. But yeah, I agree. I'll take note of that.
I might have useful references if you remind me. If
Cool,
you
yeah.
have trouble finding them, but yeah, I think I have them somewhere.
Great. Okay, so who's next? We have.
Can I make a comment about planting trees?
Yeah.
There is a very nice story by Jean Giono, the man who planted trees, that is totally worth reading for everybody.
What's that about?
I can show you just a second. Can I share my screen if that works? Oh no, I can't. So it's a book that came out in 1953, and a French author, Jean Giono, Giono, and it tells the story of somebody who in France planted trees. It's great. The story begins in 1913, and it's very, very uplifting. So I would really like to let everybody know about this book. It's a very short book. You can read it in an hour or 1.5. L'homme qui plantait des arbres, if you want to read it in French. Like when I tell my students in my class about unsustainable forestry, right? And I give them the example of the Lorax. So most of them know that, and then they can relate to that. Mm-hmm. And then I tell them, well, there's also a positive story, and that's the one by Jean Giono. And not as many know that one, but they should.
Great. It's Jean Giono,
Jean as in Jean-Francois.
Right.
And Giono, Giono. I can put that in the chat, actually. I can even put the link to the Wikipedia site that gives a little summary there.
Great.
I'll do that. Everyone.
All right, Anna, it's your turn. Our team Anna, rather.
All right, folks. Which one should we pick? Should we do impacts on humans?
Yeah, sure.
We'll do impacts on humans 200. I guess the first 200.
Yeah, we should find a way to specify which one. The first 200.
Okay, so
this one's a bit easy. The effects of climate change are felt evenly across the world. Or maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, it's false, yeah. They're not felt evenly.
They are not felt evenly, so 200 points for that. That one's, yeah, I think that one could be a bit more difficult. But at the same time, I think See, these questions haven't had much exposure because this was a 100 points question. So students who, because they got competitive about it, they were like, why would we ever pick 100 points when we could get 5 times as much, 500 points, you know? So I think maybe we can make this a bit harder, but anyway, so false, of course, the effects of climate change are not felt evenly across the world. As per usual, the people who have more power and more money are going to be less affected than the communities that have less power and less money in general. And the effects of climate change are different across the world. So just in North America, this is an interesting map of seeing how many different effects there are across North America. So there's a lot more wildfires in the West. There's going to be less precipitation in the Southwest and more precipitation pretty much everywhere else. You could see the coastlines in the east, southeast. That's where a lot of the rising sea levels from the melting ice sheets, that is going to affect a lot of those areas, whereas most of the rest of the continent isn't going to be really affected by that. So it's an ethical issue in a lot of ways, climate crisis, and that's why there's a whole climate justice movement too, because a lot of people will be affected much more than others. That's 200 points for Anna's team. Hopefully we'll be able to get through every team one more time. Yeah, we got 15 minutes left. So, Hector.
Okay, well, I didn't do very well with 300. I'm going for 500 in climate science.
Great. So, why can snowstorms be more intense in Canada because of global warming? Put a little hint of 0 degrees Celsius here. And this is really to address, there's a lot of climate deniers are like, oh, how could we be getting, how is there snow in Texas if the climate is warming?
It's going to be more intense in Canada because of global warming. Wow, that, oof.
It's a hard one.
Well, honestly, I don't have a really good answer for that. I think that it has to do with the way that the atmosphere is, the atmosphere works. There is this kind of wind masses that circle basically in the atmosphere, but they don't cross specific latitudes. I don't remember the name of this kind of wind forces. And I will say that no, honestly, I will not say anything more.
Okay, that's fair. So let's move on to Jay. Do you have an answer for half the points, for 250 points?
Is it the warmer air holds more moisture, so I'll have like snowstorms or something?
That is correct. So high temperatures of air have more room for moisture. So you could think of this as air molecules. When it's cold, they're grouped together as just like if you're a bunch of humans in a room and it's cold, you'll group together, you'll huddle together, and there's less space in between you. But when it's warm, you spread out and there's space in between you to absorb the moisture. So in a lot of areas where temperature is going to be closer to 0 degrees Celsius, which is sort of in most cases, sort of the ideal temperature for snow, because it's cold enough for snow to form in the atmosphere, and it's also at its max capacity for humidity. So when you'll tend to see in general when there tends to be a lot more snowstorms when we're closer to 0 degrees than if it's like -20 out. So this happens to be an argument that a lot of climate change deniers use, and this explains why climate change is complex and that the effects are sometimes not obvious. Okay, so Jay, with 800 points, it's your choice again.
Impacts on humans, 500.
Wow.
Describe how and why people from one of these places is feeling the effects of climate change. We have Yukon, Prince Edward Island, Southern Quebec, Alberta, and BC. And usually we would have the Jeopardy music going on in the background right
Yeah,
now.
the pressure was
Do,
too
do,
much.
do, do.
I mean, Yukon, there's a photo of like the animals, so I'm assuming migrations or animal patterns could change.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. So I'll give it to you for 500 points. So Yukon, maybe I should blur out that image a bit more so the animals aren't obvious. But yeah, animal migration is going to be an important factor, especially for indigenous communities up north, because their migration patterns of caribou, for example, are changing. Specifically, I had been up north in Nemiska, which is around the James Bay in Quebec, and they were saying how the caribou weren't passing regularly in the same places that they used to, so they had to travel a lot farther to get caribou to hunt. And other places in Canada, we have Prince Edward Island, where sea level rise and erosion are going to be affecting this coastlines. Alberta and BC were expected to get more wildfires because there's going to be less precipitation and hotter temperatures. Southeastern Quebec because of increased precipitation and more extreme events. There's very likely to be increased flooding, but flooding in the past in southern Quebec, it's hard to relate directly to climate change, but in the future, it'll be easier and easier to relate to climate change. All right, Janina is heading the pack with 1,300 points.
Wow.
Then we have Yakin with 500 points. What do you choose as your subject and point value?
System solution 100.
By 100, you mean 200, the first one?
Well, I guess so. The first 200.
Okay. So what is the best predictor of an individual's carbon footprint? A, country of residence, B, age, C, income, D, diet.
Wow. Oh. Income, C.
That is correct.
Oh,
So,
wow, good.
People who have money have larger carbon footprints in general, and same goes for countries. So countries in general that have more, a higher GDP have higher carbon footprint. So the wealthiest 10% of the world cause almost 50% of the emissions, while the poorest 50% cause only 10% of the emissions. Well, how can we even that playing field? It's a complicated question, but there are definitely solutions. Okay, that was a quick one. Let's go to Ola.
Okay, I'm gonna go straight to 500. Impacts on nature.
For 500, ooh. Okay. The timing of seasons are changing because of global warming at a faster rate than ever before. How can these changing times be a problem for plants and animals?
Well, simple as that, they cannot adjust. They don't have time to adjust. So they either extinct or they just don't. They don't have time to explore the possibilities, I would say.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. So basically the patterns of seasons, rain and temperature change. And so because it's changing faster than ever before, at least geologically in the past recent history, the schedules of plants and animals will no longer align in a lot of cases, leading to less pollination and less food. So for example, if bees aren't out at the right times that different flowers are blooming, then they won't pollinate as well, and then that will affect what is available to eat for us, for other animals, and for example, the lower trophic levels, so like rabbits. And then if there's the rabbit populations are affected, then owl populations will have less food, and so it affects all of them, even if just the insects and plants are affected. Ooh, okay, so who's next? We're at, is it Anna again? Is that what I'm seeing? Yeah, it's Anna. So Team Anna. Well, how much time do we have left? Actually, we got 5 minutes. So actually, we'll call it a day there.
Alex, come on, man. I'm joking.
Okay, we'll do one more for fun.
Yay.
And how about everybody? I don't know. You guys will answer, and we'll see if anybody else has any other answers. And
Alright.
so go ahead and choose a subject and point value.
Yeah, we're gonna go big or go home. So we're gonna do system solutions for 500.
System solutions for 500. Canada implemented a carbon tax nationwide in 2019. Give what 2 ways pricing carbon can help reduce climate change.
He would incentivize you.
Well, go for it. Go for
Okay.
it. Speak up.
Oh my goodness. It was incentivize private companies to find solutions to reduce their emissions. And 2 ways pricing carbon can help reduce climate change. Yeah, incentivize companies. I mean, it comes the same, but find solutions, also reduce their emissions. That's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the second one? What was the second one? Okay, we don't have a lot of time, so I can't really think of a second one.
We'll take half the points. Thank you so
I don't
much.
know.
Okay, well, we'll since you guys got to answer an extra question, you get 0 points. But
Fair enough.
you got one of them right. So it incentivizes companies to reduce their carbon emissions, and if carbon pricing is done correctly, it's up to debate as to whether Canada is doing it properly. But basically, it prices the externalization of all the negative harm that fossil fuels have, so on society, on the environment. So it puts a price to that. So it actually evens out things more for renewable energy, because it makes carbon energy more expensive. And ideally, the funding from these tax programs go back into environmentally friendly programs, environmental restoration. And you could see here with greenhouse gas emissions by sector in Canada, oil and gas and transport, where all the fossil fuels are the only ones that haven't reduced their carbon footprint over the past 20 years. Other than agriculture increased a tiny bit. You can see it down here. It increased a tiny bit over the past 20 years, but fossil fuels industries and transportation have increased significantly. So the carbon tax can help put a rein in on that. And yeah, I'll pass it back to Rebecca now because we're out of time.
Wait, Alex, do we have a winner?
Oh yeah, of course. So the winner is Jay Nino with 1,300 points. Congratulations. Unfortunately, we don't have a prize, but you have bragging rights as the least ignorant about the climate crisis.
Yeah, I'm the loser.
Great job. Great job, everybody. Thank you so much, Alex and Brogan. Honestly, I lost track of time, and that is the biggest compliment because we have been in sessions all week. And we're all tired. So yeah, we could have gone on.
And
thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead, Jürgen.
This is a contribution to the Global Climate Action Day, right?
Yeah, so today is a day of action. I believe there are protests. There is a protest starting now in downtown Montreal, pandemic protest. So we thought this is a kind of a teach-in as our contribution. And yeah, we really, really appreciate all of you participating, and Brogan and Alex for bringing this to us. A super fun way to end the week and to celebrate and increase our learning on this day of action in particular. And yeah, I really love this format. It's really well done and engaging and educational and fabulous. I would love to have you in my kids' school.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having us.
Sorry, I would like to say something. I really appreciate your talk. I work with the patterns of biodiversity, and sometimes I include climate and climate change. And I thought that I knew a lot of things, but this just showed me that I know really a small part of the problem. Sometimes I find myself talking to people and trying to explain them about climate change and the problem, the solution, etc., etc. But you put all these things together in a very fun and interesting way. I really appreciate it, and I'm gonna take this for the future when I talk with someone. Thank you very much.
Great. Yeah, we want as many people to use it as possible. It's not completely refined yet. It's almost there. And I would just like to thank the Sustainability Action Fund for helping fund part of this, and the Department of Geography and Planning and Environment at Concordia University for also helping us refine this, and of course to you guys, because I've received pretty good advice today, and it's been good to try to practice it online and see that it is actually possible. So thank you very much. Thank you to Rebecca. Thank you to Douglas. Thank you to Anna. Thank you to all of you for being here today.
Thanks, Alex. Sorry, Alex, I cut you off. And
I just, last thing I want to say is that what we're trying to do here is like part of the culture change of the climate crisis, of mitigating the climate crisis, and just to never underestimate the ripple effect of you talking to other people. So every conversation you have about these type of things is it's a moment of being able to iron out some ignorance and sort of having them, whoever you're talking to, have more knowledge, and them spreading out the knowledge, and that having a ripple effect over time. And just to point out that evidence of that is Greta Thunberg, because this probably wouldn't have happened without her, because we started our committee partly because she inspired us. So any little action that you do can have ripple effects, and the more you know, the more potential change you could make happen.
That's an amazing way to end this whole week of discussion, Alex. Thank you. So I have some very important thank yous for Anna and Doug at the Force Space for making this all happen. It would not have been possible in this online format in any way without their help. Next year, hopefully we'll be in person, the Force Space, with great space that we could do just this kind of thing in person, even more fun with good food. So I owe you all one. And I hope that you will enjoy the weekend. Have a great day. Stay tuned for events at the college and the research center. We do have a conference, usually in person every year, so every March. So hopefully we will be back in person or some combination next year. In the meantime, thank you all for coming. Anna, I will pass it on to you for the final word.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for the shout out. It's been really fun. And I'd like to give a shout out to my colleague, Douglas, who had so much fun working this Jeopardy board here today and working with Alex. It's been really great. And all of you for participating. And nobody's walking away empty-handed, right? Like we're all coming away a lot richer over here. So thank you, Hector, for that comment as well. That was really great to hear. Okay. Let's get outside and enjoy some of the sun. Thank you, players. You're all winners in our eyes, of course, including Hector. So we look forward to playing again with you sometime in the space. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have to put purple ones.